It's Wednesday, and I'm not hearing anything. We're going to start over. It's Wednesday. Take two, take three. There we go. You know what? I'm not starting over. So the first 11 seconds of this podcast is me thinking I'm going to start over because I couldn't really hear myself, and not starting over because I'm taking you behind the scenes. It's 8:08 on a Wednesday morning, and I got a lot to talk about, especially Myles Garrett. Now, yesterday's podcast, I didn't talk about Myles Garrett, and the truth is, it's because I recorded it the day before the news broke, which I don't usually do. It's very rare that I do that. Even when I record it the day before, sometimes, I would say 80% of my podcasts I record between 7:30 and 9 in the morning that I'm putting them out. And then the other 19 of the other 20% is late the night before. But twice I have done the podcast actually in the afternoon the day before. And for Tuesday's podcast, that happened to be one of those days. I did it Monday afternoon, and that's why I didn't have the Myles Garrett news in yesterday's podcast. And I knew I wanted to talk about it today, so I didn't go back and record for yesterday because we had some good stuff on baseball. And so I got a lot to get to with the Myles Garrett situation. I'm very angry at the way people are reacting to this. It's really out of line. And we'll get, well, not, I should say some people. It's not, certainly not a majority, and certainly not a lot of Browns fans, but there's some absurd reaction to what's happened to this Myles Garrett situation, at least as of now, based on what we know. So that's coming up. I got some thoughts looking ahead to, without Myles Garrett, assuming he doesn't play, what this, from a football standpoint, the less important part of this, because we know he's going to be okay, or at least it seems like he's going to be okay. We'll get to that in terms of on the field in this matchup with the Falcons, and hit on a little bit of the Guardians, who got back in action in what's frankly a meaningless game and a meaningless 9 games to end the regular season. But is it completely meaningless? It is in the standings, but it has some value. We'll get to all of that in today, Wednesday edition of The Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
Podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
everybody does fandom their way.
You've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for The Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
Bow, 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 bow. Yes, indeed, it is time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull. It is a cloudy morning. We've seen a lot of rain the last few days. Looks like it's clearing up finally today. We'll get some sun, maybe get back to the 60s in the next couple of days before the 6 months of the long winter. All right, whenever I think of the winter here in Cleveland, it's like Game of Thrones, if you watch that show. Like they were waiting for winter to come, and then once it started, it never ends. That's basically how it feels, right? We get pretty much here 5.5 weeks of summer, 5.5 months of summer, 5.5 months of winter, and then like 2 weeks of spring and 2 weeks of fall. That's about it. Maybe 1 week of spring and 4 weeks of fall. Maybe, if we push it a little bit. But it is what it is. The summer's great. All right, so lots to get to on today's show, and I want to begin with Myles Garrett off the field. Yesterday, the team put out a release. And here's the latest on Myles. Obviously, we know yesterday morning, Monday afternoon, he gets in this car accident. He has a passenger in the car. He's coming from the Browns facility. The weather was bad out there. The car was which is a Porsche. I was going to say it's a beautiful Porsche. It's not anymore. Is completely totaled, or at least it looks to be. I'm no car expert, but it looked really bad. Myles Garrett goes to the hospital. Very scary stuff. We do find out right away it's not life-threatening injuries, which makes you take a breath there for a second. You're like, okay, at least, nothing overly serious has happened. And yesterday morning, we find out he gets released from the hospital, which is obviously a great sign. Not only is there not anything life-threatening, it seems like that it's not going to be overly serious at all because he got out of the hospital in like 12 hours or 14 hours, whatever it was. Then yesterday afternoon, we got an update, or maybe it was evening, I can't remember now, an update on his situation, and this is what it is. Myles Garrett suffered a shoulder sprain, a bicep strain, in addition to lacerations in his one car accident. Some bumps and bruises was described as well. In terms of on the field, we don't know yet. I'll get to that a little bit later, but I want to start with this. Now, it seems like Myles Garrett's gotten very lucky here that he didn't have more serious injuries. I mean, if the worst thing he's got is a shoulder sprain and a bicep strain, he's very lucky. And we selfishly as fans are very lucky that there's nothing worse. At least there's nothing worse that they've released to the public, so I'll assume this is the worst of it. Doesn't mean it's not painful or uncomfortable for Myles Garrett. And so that's, I would say, very good news that this appears to be the worst of it. Seems fairly minor. What I would say is I've seen some really reckless speculation about what happened to Myles Garrett. We are cynical as a society. I'm to blame as well. We all jump to conclusions sometimes. We often expect the worst in people, or maybe not expect, but assume the worst in people. Whenever there's a car accident, we always tend to lean towards something nefarious happening, something, whether it's excessive speeding or some substance being involved, and that's really unfair. Especially, it's not like he got into this accident at 2:00 in the morning, where you'd be a little more suspicious, and even then, it's unfair to speculate on those things. I mean, amongst your friends, it's okay, fine, but to put that out there publicly is really irresponsible. Any media members, I'm not saying media members have done this. It's mostly been random people on Twitter. But it's just ridiculous. I understand you want to say, well, you had to be speeding to get the car looking like that. I have no idea. I'm not an authority on that. Maybe he was speeding. By the way, there's a big difference between, I don't know, I can't remember what the speed limit was on the road he was driving at the moment, but there's a big difference between going, let's be honest. Haven't we all been speeding at times in our lives? Now, if he was excessively speeding on a road that was when it's raining, then that's pretty silly. But that's not. I don't know that we need to impugn his character for that. We don't even know that it happened. So let's see what happens here, right? And this is a situation that so far the report has been that there was no substances involved, and he was coming from Brown's practice or the Browns facility. So it's hard to believe that would be. And just the way Myles Garrett carries himself, the way he looks physically, I can't. I mean, I find it hard to believe Myles Garrett's having too many drinks. So that just doesn't seem realistic to begin with. So why people would speculate about that, I mean, I just think is stupid. It's irresponsible. It's unfair to him. I saw some knucklehead on Twitter going, somebody forwarded me a tweet I don't even know who this Yutz is. Some news guy. Well, not even news guy. From some, alt oddball station or whatever. I don't even know his name. Not even worth mentioning. But it was something like, once again, Myles Garrett showing he's irresponsible. No wonder Baker was critical of him. And I'm like, what are you talking? I mean, I shouldn't even have mentioned that. But it's just so stupid. We don't know what happened. The important thing is he seems to be okay, relatively okay, and we wish him the best. And hopefully he'll be back healthy and back on the field at some point. In terms of, the on the field for Myles Garrett, we'll see. I mean, we're all curious. He hasn't even been ruled out for this game. My assumption is he won't play this week, but Myles Garrett's a freak, so it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up playing. Obviously, the defense is banged up in the. It's funny because going into the season, what we were really worried about is the secondary in terms of injuries, because the Browns have a history with their guys in their secondary of having a lot of injuries and dealing with that. But the Browns so far this year, outside of Greedy Williams, who's we're not worried about him, but outside of him, the secondary has stayed healthy. All the starters and those guys have been good, and it's the front that's a bit of a mess right now, right? Myles Garrett may not play this week because of the accident. Jadeveon Clowney got hurt a couple of weeks ago, didn't play last week. He is, questionable for the game. Again, we don't know for sure, but it's possible they're both out. Taven Bryan, one of the starting defensive tackles, is banged up. We know JOK left last week's game, and we know Anthony Walker's out for the season. So yesterday, the Browns signed linebacker Jermaine Carter Jr., defensive end Curtis Weaver to the practice squad. So they've added a couple of guys in their front. But, at the moment, in terms of on the field, now that we know Myles is okay, you are looking at potentially 5 of your 6 starters up front missing this game. Now, none of them are definitely out except for Anthony Walker. Anthony Walker's done for the season. In terms of JOK, Bryan, Myles, and Clowney, we don't know. And Taven Bryan, I don't think he even really matters because I don't know if there's any drop-off. But he's not very good. The guys behind him, D-tackle's an issue. We know that. But in terms of Myles Garrett, JOK, and Clowney, those are big deals, especially Myles Garrett more than any, and on the field. And we'll see what happens. So it's hard to get a good feel of what to expect from the Browns defense in this game without knowing whether or not Myles Garrett's going to play. But we do know he's going to be okay. We do know he's out of the hospital. We do know, as far as we know, he hasn't suffered any particularly serious injuries. And considering how bad that looked and how bad the car looked, Myles Garrett appears to be in pretty good shape. And because he is, looks like he was carved out of a mountain, but I guess that helped, probably. I'm don't pretend to be a doctor or an expert on car accidents in any way, but I think it's got to help. Who knows? But glad he's okay. Hopefully he can be on the field. That's up to him. We'd love to see. If he plays this week, it's great. I would assume he's not going to, but we wish him the best. So even though it's going to be hard to predict what that front six is going to look like for the Browns, we still got to look ahead to the matchup with the Falcons, and we'll get into some of the specifics with the game in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform today. With the NFL season kicking off, Sleeper is climbing the charts with over 4 million plus users. In addition, they just launched 22 new features, including over-unders integrated into fantasy. The first sports contest game built into the fantasy experience. Not only can you enter a contest via over-under, but you can also do so through your Fantasy League's matchup screen. It's super simple. First, in any sport, choose 2 or more players that you like and pick the over-under. For example, rushing yards in football, number of points in basketball. Then choose the amount of money you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times to over 20 times the money you put in. That's a pretty good deal. Main reason I'm excited about Over-Under on Sleeper is that it's the only app where I can join my friends' contests and play together. Built-in group chat where I can see and copy my group picks with a tap of a button. It's insanely fun. A lot of trash talking, all good. So stop what you're doing and download Sleeper now to play their over-under game. Have fun with your friends and make some money. On your mobile phone, join our listener group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/lockedonbets or sleeper.com/lockedon today. They'll automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, go to sleeper.com/lockedonbets, sleeper.com/lockedon today, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. My dog smashing his head into my leg right now. We're going yellow cup again today. I think I had yellow cup yesterday. Don't know. Don't think anybody cares, but I'll tell you anyway. All right, so we got to figure out how the Browns will deal with Atlanta. And here's the reality of the situation, folks. I've mentioned this before. Stop turning 3 games, whether it's the Browns or anybody else. Football's such a monster. We talk about it so much that we tend to make sweeping judgments about teams based on 3 games. And I tweeted that the other day. People say, well, that's what you do for a living. No, I don't make. So here's the thing. We make opinions all the time, right? You got to have an opinion. But I think when you talk about a team in 3 games, when it's this early in the season, first of all, I don't care who's in first place. Yeah, I guess you'd rather be in first place. It's irrelevant. When you talk about a team 3 games in, especially if a team is doing something that you didn't expect, like Jacoby Brissett playing well the last 2 games, you can't turn that into, wow, the Browns have one of the best quarterbacks in football. That's stupid. You sound like an idiot when you say that. It's reasonable to say, wow, Jacoby Brissett's played great the last 2 games. Great for him, at least. He's played tremendous. He's done what they've needed him to do and more the last 2 games. Whether it's about any team, the Raiders stink now. Well, maybe they will, but if you thought they were good going into the season, you shouldn't completely write them off after 0-3. Unless there's a massive injury on a team, and it may just be the Raiders are a big disappointment this year. But I think you have to be realistic about the fact that we're way early in the season, and we still don't have a great feel for any of these teams. The truth is that the Browns have played probably, again, we don't know for sure, but we all said before the year that the Browns' first 4 games were pretty, easy. I say easy. It's the NFL. Nothing's easy. But comparatively, I think most people would agree that, including the Falcons, the 4 teams the Browns have played are going to be amongst the bottom 8 or 10 teams in the league. So you have to look at that realistically, whereas games 5 through 11, you're playing a lot of teams that are going to be in the top 10 in the league, or that we expect to be in the top 10 in the league. It may look differently by the end of the year, but I just think you got to keep your expectations and your analysis of the team realistic under those parameters. I'm not saying that to bum you out and say the Browns can't win games, because they can. I thought they could even before Jacoby Brissett played this well. But he's played well the last 2 games. I think you got to be realistic for your expectations. Guy's not going to become a top 10 quarterback all of a sudden after a decade in the league or whatever it's been. He's almost 30. He's going to be 30 years old soon. I mean, he's not a star. He's a serviceable backup quarterback that the more he plays, he often gets exposed. And hopefully through smart game planning and a great run game, they can overcome that. Now, part of the way you thought you'd overcome it, part of the way you thought you'd deal with it is with a great defense. And the Browns' defense hasn't been great. So the quarterback has overachieved so far this year. The running game we expected to be excellent. It's been excellent. The defense, we expected it to be excellent. It's not been. So part of this team, the passing game, better than expected. And a big part of this team, the defense, has been worse than it's expected. And now into this Atlanta game, and I'll look at the spread now. I thought it was interesting on Monday evening, actually. The Browns were a 3.5-point favorite over the Falcons in Vegas. And as I said on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show yesterday, it's rare that a non-quarterback moves the point spread. But the Browns are now, and they were as of yesterday during the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, a 1.5-point favorite. So that line has moved due to the injuries on the Browns defense, I think, especially Myles Garrett. It's probably all Myles Garrett. And it does make a difference. Now, I still expect the Browns to go to Atlanta and win this game, but the Browns are going to be in a lot of close games. And the state of their front is a major concern right now. If Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney don't play, and what if Myles, Clowney, and JOK all don't play? I mean, you really have no quality players in your front 6. None. If those 3 guys are out. Those are your 3 best players on your defensive front. Your 4th best player, Anthony Walker, is out for the year. So if you're out without your top 4 guys and your 5th and 6th guy weren't good to begin with, it's a major problem. The Falcons have run the ball well behind Cordarrelle Patterson, who, credit them, they've done a great job developing him after many years in the league as a journeyman. They still are not good at quarterback. Marcus Mariota is not a good quarterback. It's not changing in Atlanta. There's no some miracle cure for him. He's a bust. He's still a bust. But, they have some talented skill position players. Cordarrelle Patterson, their tight end Kyle Pitts, and their rookie wide receiver Drake London. But overall, I think they're way overachieving on offense. I don't buy that they're a good offense as the season goes along. I do buy that their defense stinks, and I still expect, even with the injuries on defense, I expect the Browns to win a game. I know it's on the road. I know there's a lot of injuries up front. It's hard to say. It's hard to get a good feel at this point for the defense because we just don't know. I mean, if I had to bet today, I would bet Myles Garrett doesn't play, but, even as I'm saying it, I'm like, but he's Myles Garrett. He's a badass. He's tough. I know. I mean, if he got into a car accident on Monday and then played 6 days later, that'd be pretty badass. But I don't say that to make it seem like if he doesn't play, he's not badass, because he still would be. And I don't know what's better for him. He's got to talk to his family or whatever. I mean, it seems to be based on the facts we have on what injuries he has. If he can play, I think he will, and it may just be a pain tolerance. I don't know. I shouldn't even. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there's reasons he can't play beyond pain tolerance due to these injuries. So we shall see. But I still expect the running game to be dominant. The Falcons, again, are not very good defensively. And, they've given up 27, 31, and 23 points. And the 23 was to a bad Seattle offense. But let's see. In terms of running the ball, the Saints had 19 carries for 151 yards against the Falcons. That's 8 yards per carry. Taysom Hill, their former quarterback / tight end, carried 81 times. Alvin Kamara didn't have an amazing game on the ground, but he still averaged almost 4.5 yards a carry. But overall, they ran it 8 yards a pop, the Saints, in Week 1 against the Falcons. Their second game against the Rams, not a good running team. The Rams did not run it. The Rams were terrible on the ground. Well, that included they had one, I don't know what happened here. They had one carry by somebody named Brandon Powell, which was one carry for negative 26 yards. That might have been some sort of weird play. So beyond that, Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, 25 carries for 91 yards. That's less than 4 yards a carry, so they didn't do well there. And the Rams have struggled to run the ball the last couple of years. So I'll give the Falcons credit there. They had a decent game there. And Seattle, another team that is struggling to run the ball. But they did not against the Falcons. They had there was 23 carries. If you take out Geno Smith's kneel downs, it was 21 carries for 113 yards, which is just under 5 yards per carry. So, and this is, and you're talking about, the only real top back that they faced is Alvin Kamara. And as good as Alvin Kamara is, he's not as good as Nick Chubb, and I don't think he's as good as Kareem Hunt. So, I expect the Browns, as they're going to do very often this year, to be able to run the ball all over the Atlanta Falcons. Because the Falcons have run it well, I think, and their passing game is not much to take advantage of there. It's not been great. Although they may try some more because there might not be a pass rush, but the Browns are going to be hamstrung from stopping the run. I think we're going to see a ton of running plays in this game. I think it's going to be a fast moving game. When you have a ton of running, obviously the clock's moving more often. So I think it's going to be. I'll save the prediction, the official prediction, but I am leaning towards the Browns, and I do expect a ton of running plays for both teams in this game because both teams have questionable quarterbacks. The Browns, you trust Brissett more because he's played better. But the offense has been pretty solid for Atlanta, too. I'll give them that credit. As much as I don't buy it, I'll give them that credit. All right, I'll take a second break. We come back, spend a few minutes on the Guardians and the Cavs as we head down the home stretch on a Wednesday edition of The Bullpen with Adam the Bull. All right, Guardians back in action yesterday. First of 9 straight games at home to end the regular season. 3 with Tampa Bay, and then 6 with the Royals. Again, so weird to be playing a 6-game series. Guardians' winning streak came to an end. Again, the game doesn't matter. The Guardians are locked into the 3 seed in the American League. They did come back in this game against Tampa Bay. They were up 1-0 early, and then it was then they were down 4-1. And then it was 4-3. They tie it in the 8th. And Rays scored 2 in the 11th. Guardians got 1 back in the bottom of the 11th, and they lose 6-5. Shane Bieber got 6 innings in this game. Not one of his best outings. Didn't walk anybody again. And who knows what his mindset was coming into this game, but he did give up 4 runs. And bullpen did a good job. Stephan gave it up at the end, but the rest of the guys, De Los Santos, Sandlin, I was a little surprised that Clase pitched in this game. I would have thought that Tito wanted to give him a little more rest, but he pitched an inning, only threw 8 pitches. So De Los Santos, Sandlin, Clase, and Karinchak, 4 perfect innings, no base runners, 5 strikeouts. So there you go. No home runs for the Guardians. Miles Straw stole his 20th base. Gabriel Arias stole his first. Jose had the only extra base hit with a triple. They had 13 singles and a triple. I mean, that's the Guardians, right? I mean, they got 19 base runners in the game, and 18 were singles and walks. But listen, again, the games don't really matter. It would be cool for them to get 90 wins, which I still think they will. They need to. They've got 8 games left. They got to go 4-4 to win 90. They still want to win these games. Obviously, they're playing a win. I mean, you want to have the right. Again, I say the games don't matter in terms of the standings or where they're going to be in the wild. In the playoff bracket, they're going to be the 3 seed no matter what happens. But it does matter to some degree in terms of keeping that momentum of their great play, keeping guys fresh but not rusty. This is why you trust Francona, and he's the most experienced manager in these situations. You trust him more than the other teams that are in these situations because he's been there, done that, and he's got to find a way to keep guys in the lineup, get them some breathers, keep them fresh, the bullpen guys, some guys in the lineup. We saw Jimenez get the day off yesterday. Wouldn't be surprised me if we saw Rosario get a day, and Straw, and even Ramirez, as much as he hates, they all hate being out of the lineup, but. We'll see these guys get some breathers here and still keep them sharp, but keep them fresh. You got to find that delicate balance there, which is a challenge. But if anybody's up to that challenge, it's certainly Terry Francona. We'll keep an eye. The only thing we're looking at really is who will the Guardians play. That's what we don't know. We know who the 3 wild card teams are going to be. It's going to be the Blue Jays, the Rays, and I guess we don't know for sure. That's not set in stone because the Orioles are 4 games back in the loss column, 3.5 total behind the Mariners. I'm assuming it's going to be the Blue Jays, Rays, and Mariners, although the Mariners are not playing very well, but neither are the Orioles. They lost again yesterday. So I'm assuming it's going to be the Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Mariners. Right now, the Mariners are the team that the Guardians will play. It's been the case for a while. They're 1 back in the loss column to Tampa Bay. Mariners lost yesterday. Tampa obviously beat the Guardians, and the Blue Jays are the first wild card right now. Even though they did lose, they're only a game back with Toronto for the first wild card, or at least 1 game back in the loss column. I'm going to have to check out these tiebreakers between these 3 teams. That's going to be important to know before the end of the season. Remember, there's no 163 this year. If teams end up tied, it goes by head-to-head record between those teams. All right, one final thing. Monday was Cavs Media Day. And if you missed it, we do this thing 60 seconds with a player. We did it with Jacoby Brissett. We did it with a couple of, who other Browns player? I can't even remember now. But our crew, Mikey McNuggets, Anthony, and Earl did an awesome job. They went to Cavs Media Day Monday. Shout out to Brad Sellers, of course, and Jason Lloyd, who really helped the guys. Brad had a nice sit down and did some interviews for us for the show. And Mikey McNuggets did some 60 seconds with, even though they're longer than 60 seconds, but not long, like some fun questions. We had the one with Robin Lopez yesterday, and we got a bunch more coming. Our guys spoke to Donovan Mitchell. They spoke to Kobe Altman. They spoke with Jenny Osman. They spoke with a bunch of the guys, like I said, including Donovan Mitchell. So we'll be showing those over the next few days. Apparently all the guys were great. There's a really great attitude with this team. And I'll tell you, man, if Evan Mobley could ascend to being a top 10 player, because that's the only thing you're worried about. Like in terms of top 50 players, top 30 players, top 100 players, the Cavs have a lot, more than most teams. The only thing that makes me nervous is right now they don't have a top 10 player. And I don't even know, the Pistons, I guess, 20 years ago, whatever it was, more than that, I guess. I can't remember what year it was. But that Pistons team is probably the last team to win without a top 10 player. And obviously we're not expecting Cavs to win a championship this year. We'd like to see them make a run in the playoffs, and I think they will. I think they got a great team. But if Evan Mobley can ascend over the next couple of years to a top 10 level player, if that happens, and I think there's a decent chance it will, oh boy, the Cavs are going to be scary good if that happens. And Evan Mobley is a rookie. I thought was already elite defensively. His offensive game has to develop. It was pretty darn good as a rookie, but obviously there's a long way. Not a long way to go, but there's a way to go. I mean, it's a good thing though that there's a lot of room to grow for him offensively and just physically. He's such a young guy. I mean, think about the leap Darius Garland has taken since his rookie year, and this guy's even more talented. So things looking up. Things looking great for all three teams here in Cleveland. It's a fun time. All right, that's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. See ya.